When you board a plane, you trust that the plane and pilot will work together in harmony to take you to your intended destination, right? While this is the case most times, there are instances where something goes wrong even when everything seems right. From engine failures to tire explosions, not every flight leaves the ground in a perfect manner. This video hones in on 14 unique instances where pilot takeoffs went wrong. While several resulted in close calls, others paved the way for full-blown emergencies. Quickly, let's see what incidents make the cut. Lufthansa A320 GIS-200 engine failure during takeoff roll. At Frankfurt Airport, passengers boarded a Lufthansa A320-200 without incident. However, a scary moment that got many scared occurred on the runway. As the plane gained momentum, the right engine failed. Surveillance footage shows fire coming out of this engine just before the plane went airborne. Although the plane left the ground, the pilot made an emergency landing. Airport emergency services responded quickly to this incident and no injuries were reported. Asiana Airlines A380 engine failure before takeoff in Seoul. An Asiana Airbus A380 that was prepping for the AZ-202 flight from Seoul to Los Angeles suddenly caught on fire at the gate while the first engine was being refueled. Footage from one of the boarding passengers shows dark smoke emanating from that part of the plane. Airport firefighters attended to the issue promptly. Thankfully, no one had boarded the aircraft. Therefore, there wasn't any injury to report. The aircraft was immediately grounded after this horrific incident, and passengers received a replacement after 5 hours. Thomas Cook Airbus A330 engine explosion. An Airbus A330-200 in Thomas Cook's fleet had its right engine violently fail while accelerating down the runway at Manchester Airport. Surveillance footage captures a fire accompanied by an air of dark smoke. The pilots quickly noticed the problem and brought the plane to an abrupt stop. Just as the aircraft got to a complete halt, emergency services arrived at the scene, putting out the fire and removing passengers from the plane. No injuries were reported. Nonetheless, this incident left some debris in its wake. Investigators later accessed the incident and reported that the fire and smoke emanating from the plane's right engine was caused by a turbine blade failure. KLM Boeing 737 engine failure shortly after taking off. A KLM flight featuring a Boeing 737 experienced an engine failure just after takeoff. As seen on video footage, the blue-colored plane was already in the skies when its left engine began spurting fire. The pilots reacted to this scenario immediately and kick-started emergency landing protocols almost immediately. They aborted the climb and returned to the runway swiftly. Fortunately, they landed the plane safely and passengers disembarked from it without incident. Boeing 737 suffers bird strike as it takes off. A Boeing 777 belonging to Ryanair departing Edinburgh Airport had its engine suddenly emitting flames while on the runway. This scenario stemmed from a bird strike. As depicted in the video footage, multiple birds were flying along the plane's path. While many weaved past, one got caught in the plane's engine. However, unlike other takeoffs we've highlighted in this video, this plane still took flight due to the engine's structural integrity remaining intact even after the bird strike. Boeing 767 experiences tire failure. A Boeing 767-300 attached to Delta Airlines performing a flight from Detroit to Sao Paulo blew a tire positioned at the aft inboard right-hand main gear just before takeoff from Detroit's runway 21L. However, while rotating for takeoff, crew members retracted the gear with a blown tire in without issues and proceeded with the flight. But while approaching Sao Paulo, the crew declared an emergency landing as a precaution. The Boeing 767 landed safely. However, due to repairs, Delta Airlines canceled its return flight. Small aircraft rolls over due to sudden wind gust. A small single-engine Cessna 182 flipped over on the runway of Harry Reid International Airport located in Las Vegas. This incident happened when the plane was lining up for takeoff. At first, everything looked good. However, as it proceeded down the runway, a sudden gust of wind alongside jet blast from another aircraft caused it to roll over. Due to the plane's structure, the pilot was powerless and couldn't counter the sudden force. Emergency services arrived at the scene after the accident, and both passengers left the aircraft unscathed. American Airlines Boeing 737's tire explodes during takeoff. A Boeing 737 belonging to American Airlines had one of its tires blown off during takeoff at the Tampa International Airport. Unlike the Boeing 767 experience we highlighted earlier, the pilots didn't proceed with the flight, as they had enough stopping distance to bring the plane to a complete stop. As seen on the footage, first responders arrived at the scene in record time and safely deplaned all 174 passengers and 6 crew members on board. Injuries weren't reported, and all passengers were put on replacement flights back to Phoenix. F-15 jet experiences. Afterburner blowout during takeoff. One of the fastest fighter jets of all time, the F-15 was recorded to have suffered an afterburner blowout during takeoff. At the start of the footage, the plane is seen moving down the runway with normal engine flare. Shortly after, an afterburner blowout, a scenario where the engine suddenly delivers a huge spurt of fire, occurs. When this happened, the aircraft was seen slowing down. And based on what we can decipher from the video, no one got hurt during this incident. Airbus A300 plane spitting flames after bird strike. A DHL Airbus A300-300F plane cleared for takeoff was moving along the runway of Amsterdam Schiphol Airport when it suffered a bird strike just as its gears were leaving the ground. After the strike occurred, the plane's left engine started spitting flames. The pilots contacted tower control and opted to continue with the flight to Leipzig-Halle Airport. When the plane got to its destination, DHL's plane maintenance crew was on hand to diagnose the problem. Boeing cargo plane makes emergency landing due to engine failure. A Puerto Rico-bound Boeing cargo plane was diverted back to its origin, Miami International Airport, shortly after it took off due to an engine failure. Atlas Air Flight 5YY95 was seen shooting out flames shortly after it took off. Fortunately, it made its way back to the airport and made an emergency landing without incident. Although the cause for the engine failure is still gray-zoned, an investigation conducted by the Federal Aviation Administration confirmed a small-sized hole above Engine 2. Delta Airlines Boeing 767, forced to make emergency landing due to engine fire. Delta Airlines flight DL-446 was on its way from Los Angeles to Atlanta when it experienced a fire moments after taking off. Video footage confirms this scary scenario characterized by flames erupting from the plane's left engine. When this situation reared its ugly head, pilots quickly declared an emergency landing at LAX. Before it made its way back to the runway, emergency services were already primed to render assistance. Once the plane landed, first responders swooped into action to extinguish the fire. As such, all 226 passengers and 9 crew members on the 767-400 were deplaned safely. Furthermore, no injuries were reported. The bird strike that prompted something extraordinary. U.S. Airways Flight 1549 was a scheduled flight that took off from the LaGuardia Airport in New York to Charlotte and Seattle. Back in 2009, something jarring happened to this flight. On the 15th of January, the A320 that serviced this flight took off from LaGuardia. But moments after it became airborne, it encountered a bird strike that saw them lose engine power. Due to the plane's low altitude and distance to the surrounding airport, pilots Chesley Sullenberger, aka Sully, and Jeffrey Skiles made the split-second decision to glide the plane and ditch it in the Hudson River. This decision on the surface looked crazy and fatal, but they managed to pull it off. The plane didn't crash on impact, and all 155 souls on board were rescued. It wasn't all smooth sailing, though. 100 people were injured, 5 of them with serious injuries. Near disaster for Royal Air Morocco. Back in 2016, a Royal Air Morocco flight going from Frankfurt to Casablanca had a weird and near-fatal experience. It taxied along the runway like any aircraft would at Frankfurt Airport. But as it was approaching the end of the tarmac, the pilot still couldn't get the plane off the ground. At the last possible moment, the plane was able to get the thrust it needed to get airborne. However, before accomplishing this feat, the plane was so close to a tail strike that could have proved fatal to passengers on board. Once the plane got in the air, it headed to its destination without hassles. However, we're pretty sure that Royal Air Morocco did an internal review to ensure this scenario never occurs. The takeoff fails highlighted in this video shows you how quickly things can go from normal to critical in the aviation world. Behind every successful takeoff and landing is an experienced crew who makes split-second decisions to ensure everyone's safety. Did you find this video interesting? If yes, give this video a like and leave a comment. And if you're interested in everything aviation, click on that subscribe button for a steady dose. Ciao.